You got nasties going on with your nudging? Have you got terrible things going on with your tempo? Well, whatever the cliche, if there's something wrong with the way the speed controls are working on your DJ gear, if you're moving the faders up and down and you're not seeing the adjustments you can see going on here, where you can see the BPM going up and down, if you're nudging and you don't think anything's happening on your decks, then there's always a reason for it. And so in this lesson, I'm going to go through what the reasons are and how to correct them. Now I'm using Denon DJ gear here, but this works with all DJ systems. This works with software. It works with standalone. It even works, and indeed I've got a bonus tip for you at the end, with professional DJ gear that you'll find in pro DJ booths. I'm going to talk through all of that now. Now, because this is Digital DJ Tips and because this is live, if you're watching this live, you can ask questions. They're all coming in through to me here. And any questions you have on this topic, we'll get to maybe one or two of those at the end. But even if you're watching the replay of this somewhere, ask questions. My team and I will get to you and we will help you with any issues you have on any DJ system, any setup regarding speed. But I've got 5 plus that bonus tip to go through with you now. So let's get started. Number 1, the first reason why when you're moving the pitch control, now these are sometimes called tempo faders and they're sometimes called pitch controls. The reason for that is that when you change the tempo of a track, the pitch or how high or low it is will go up or down as well. Turn it down, it's going lower, right? The pitch is dropping. Turn it up, and the pitch is going up, right? That's why it's called a pitch control. Now, if you're doing that and it's not doing anything, the main reason for beginner, because beginners are often using this feature, that won't be working, is that you've got the sync buttons switched on. Because if you've got 2 tracks synced together, as I have here, then often on DJ systems, one of the decks will be what's called the master deck, and it's controlling the tempo of anything else that's playing with it. So in this instance, if I move this pitch fader down here, both decks, you see, are getting slower together. The beats are staying lined up. And both are getting faster as well. But on some DJ systems, any other tempo fader, and so you could have another deck, you could have 2, 3, 4 different things all attached to the master deck, if you like, won't do anything. You're pushing this up and down and nothing's happening. You're thinking, my faders are broken, but they're not broken. It's because only the one that's aligned with the master setting on the system. On your screen, sometimes there'll be a thing that says master deck. Now on this one, it's not working like that. It's not all DJ setups that do that, just some have this master. But if you're using, for instance, Tractor is a big one that uses it. If you've got Tractor, then you'll find that that is the case. And so the first thing to check on any DJ system, if you're finding that the pitch controls aren't working and you're using sync, is to check you're moving the right pitch control. Because if you're not, then there's a chance that that's why it's not working, because that's the way it's designed. So it's not a fault. None of these things are faults, by the way. Everything I'm going to tell you now is a feature. It's just that if you're used to using record decks especially, but even old-fashioned, relatively old-fashioned DJ gear like this, then a lot of these things are a little bit different to what you might know, right? Okay, so that's number 1. Make sure that your sync is not disabling the pitch or tempo fader on your system. So number 2, second reason why this might be a problem is actually when you turn the sync off. So why on earth, if you've got no sync running and there's nothing that's pulling together your tracks here, why on earth would your pitch controls not work? That doesn't make sense, does it? Well, actually, it does make sense, and it makes sense for a really good reason. So let's just completely reset. Let's turn off the sync on both of those decks, right? So there's no sync going, and let's just move around the pitch controls and put them both to the very middle. So this is as if we've just loaded both of these songs on these decks with no sync on, right? Let's have a little look at the BPMs. We've got a 127 and a 125, right? This one's a little bit faster than this one. Now, if I turn the sync buttons on, now look again. This one here has now been synced to 125 to this one. Now we know this was 127, but it's now 125. And of course it is. It's so that when we play both of those tracks together, they're nicely synced up. The BPMs have to be the same for that to be the case, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be synced. If this was still 127, this one would be pulling ahead of this one, and that's not what we want. That's not what sync is there for. So this one is now 125. It's gone down 2 BPMs. But the fader hasn't moved at all. The fader is still bang in the middle. And so what gives? Surely the fader, if this is to go down 2 BPMs, the fader has to move down a bit as well, right? But it hasn't. Of course it hasn't. It's not motorized. By the way, some used to be. It's not motorized. So what's happened here is that the software has decided to play this slower, but the mechanical fader has stayed in the position it was previously in. This is in the 127 BPM position, but the track is now at 125. So this fader here, if we turn sync off on the decks, they're not set to sync now. This fader, usually you'd expect if I speeded it up, the BPM would speed up. And it's doing that now, but sometimes it doesn't do that. And the reason it doesn't do that sometimes is that you have to move the fader to where it would have been before you turn sync on. So in this case, down to 125. As soon as you do that, the deck will start working again. The fader will start working again. As soon as you do that, you're going to be good to go again. It's called soft takeover. And the reason soft takeover is there is that when you're playing a track and you turn sync off, you don't want it to jump to the BPM that it would have been at if the fader was where it's currently set. Because in that instance, it was only 2 BPMs, but it could have been a huge jump. It could have been, you could have synced the track and it moved 10 BPMs. And then you turn the sync off and suddenly it jumps to where it would have been. And it sounds terrible. And so the idea is that the fader won't do anything until you move it to the place where it would have been had you set the BPM that sync has automatically set for you, right? So it's called soft takeover. And honestly, the easiest way of doing it is just if your fader's not working, if you're finding it's not doing anything, just move it up and down until you find the BPM where it suddenly starts working. Keep an eye on the counter on your screen and see when it starts moving. And then if you do that gently, then as soon as you realize you've got control again, then you can slowly move it to where you want it to be. So that's the second reason, soft takeover, which always happens when you've had sync on, but you turn it off again. So in this lesson, looking at the reasons why your speed controls might not work on all DJ gear. Like I say, I'm using Denon DJ gear here, but it could be any gear. These with slight variations tend to work on all gear. They're problems that you can potentially have on most DJ setups. We've looked at 2. We've looked at when the sync button is on, it might just be that only one fader is going to control all the decks and the others won't do anything depending on your system. And we've also looked at when you turn sync off, the deck whose BPM has moved to match the other ones, you'll need to move the fader sometimes back to the place where the BPM would have been set had you done it manually. And these do have variations over systems. For instance, in Serato, when you tap sync off twice, I think, hold down shift and press sync twice, the second tap will make that leap for you without you having to move the fader from memory. But anyway, look, if the problem is there, that's probably what the cause is. So we've covered 2 problems here with these faders. What about with nudging? What about with this movement? Now, when you are playing a track normally and nudging, that happens. It gets faster when you go clockwise, slower when you go anti-clockwise. If you touch the top, usually you get this scratch feel, right? But the edge is like this. The reason that's like that is to help you beat mix. Because if you're trying to manually beat mix and you've got 2 tracks playing, then the way you do that is by using the tempo controls to get the speeds close to each other and use nudge to just get the tracks lined up on your waveforms. It's what the sync button is doing for you when you use that. But if you're doing it manually, you need this nudge function on the edge. By the way, when you're paused, you don't get it. It's only when you're playing, right? You can hear it's working, right? So the first problem people have with this is they don't understand what it's doing. They think that this should slow the track, this should slow the track down permanently. And so they don't understand why the tempo readout, the BPM readout, isn't moving when they're doing this. It's not changing, it's not speeding it up or slowing it down. It is, but it's just temporary. It's to be used in conjunction with this. If you're beat mixing 2 tracks and you're constantly speeding this one up to keep it going with this one, then you move this up a little bit, and then you'll probably find you're not speeding it up as much. You move that up a little bit more, and suddenly you don't have to touch it at all. Bang, they're okay. Some people don't even use nudge. Our tutor, Jazzy Jeff, does what we've always called riding the faders, which is he's so good at hearing what's going on, he can just get 2 tracks playing together by just adjusting their speed controls here without having screens and stuff. I mean, he can do it with vinyl, but Jeff is a bit of a hero, and most of us can't do that. So that's what the nudge is for. Now, the 4th problem, and this is another nudge one, is actually quite a curious one. This one is actually part of the 5th one as well, but we'll split it into 2. Now, when you nudge a track to make it pull into time with another track, what you're doing is speeding it up or slowing it down. And you can hear it, right? We could hear it then. The pitch goes up temporarily and down temporarily. That can sound quite bad in the mix, but at least you can hear it's happening, right? Now, one of the things that's come to digital DJ gear, which is brand new since digital DJ gear appeared, is key lock or tempo master tempo. Key lock or master tempo is this, it's usually a button at the top here. Over on Pro DJ gear, again, it's at the top here. And key lock or master tempo is a clever little button which will keep the pitch the same when you move the speed up and down. So that means that if you slow a track down, it doesn't go really low. And if you speed a track up, it doesn't go all chipmunky like this, which can be really good. It can be good because it's just good, it's creative. You can play tracks faster or slower without them sounding really weird. But when it comes to nudging, it's not actually that good, because if you're trying to hold 2 tracks together in the mix, you're practicing your manual beat mixing, then you might well find that your nudges can be heard. They're heard like slurs, like ooh, ooh, ooh. And you know, the classic is DJs playing a cappellas, trying to maul an a cappella in over a beat, and you can hear the a cappella being mauled in. Well, look, one of the great things about key lock or master tempo is it fixes that for you, because normally, oh, let's do that again at the edge. Normally, you can hear nudge, right? If I put key lock on, it's still speeding up and slowing down, but it's far more subtle. And that's because the system is holding the tempo, or rather the pitch, steady as this momentarily changes the tempo. But I was talking to a student just the other day who was really confused because they were convinced that this wasn't working. And we deduced that the reason they were convinced it wasn't working is that they weren't hearing this. They weren't hearing that big pitch change. Because if you're used to using record decks, then you know the second you touch it, you can hear that pitch change. There's no such thing on record decks as master tempo or key lock. And so coming to this kind of gear, the confusion is that, look, I'm doing this nudge thing, but I can't hear it, it's not working properly. It's a feature, not a bug. And it's actually, once you understand what it is, it's quite a good feature, because it can make you sound better than you are. Because if you're nudging a lot to keep a manual mix together, it does sound a lot better with key lock on. But the solution is, if you don't think it's working, turn key lock off, and you'll probably find that you can suddenly hear it. And then when you're confident it is working how you think it should be, you can turn key lock back on again. Right, so before we move on to the one that does catch people out when they first move to Pro Gear, which we're going to use as our bonus. We're going to move over here at the end, and I'll just quickly tell you that one. But before we do that, I want to give you the 5th kind of one for everyone with controllers and with laptops and with standalone gear like this and so on. The 5th reason you might think the speed controls aren't working when really they are. And this one is a little bit different because it's a way that makes everything more subtle, and it combines with the key lock. So this is a feature you don't get on record decks at all. Record decks have their pitch control here. It goes to +8 or -8, which means that it's going to take it up 8% or down 8%. That's it. If you're used to that, look at my little hand in the corner there. This control here, right? Plus or minus 8% on these two. So if you're used to that and you come over to a piece of gear like this, there's something here that you just don't get on record decks, and that is the pitch range. Now, this is sometimes on 2 buttons down underneath the tempo fader. It's always going to be very near here. And if it's not here, then you might just find it's on the computer screen. You need to click it with a mouse, or it's on the display screen of your standalone system. Whatever it is, it's a way of altering how much this control changes the tempo. So I've got this deliberately set quite high so you can hear it. But you can set this to far more subtle ranges. So by holding down the shift button in this corner here and pressing the pitch down, then it's going to move the pitch range, and you can see it changing here where my finger is. So that's actually at -4 now, +/-4. That means that when I move this up and down, it's only going to move up and down by 4%. So see how little the waveform is adjusting to show me that change. It's hardly anything. Now you can still hear that. But if I put key lock on as well, and I'm not looking at that waveform, or I've got a system where the waveforms don't move like that. Some systems, the waveforms don't adjust like this when you are changing the tempo. That's almost like it's not working right. You can imagine someone loading a track and saying, my pitch control is not working. Forget that. Just listening to it. Phil, why is my pitch control not working? Look, it's clearly broken. It's not broken, and you know enough now to know why. It's because that control is set to a very subtle increase or decrease in tempo, and the key lock's on. And the key lock's on, and so you don't hear it get lower or higher in pitch. So if you've got problems with any of the controls that alter the speed of your music on any DJ system, they're the things to check. Check that you haven't got sync on and you're moving the wrong fader, because it could be that just one will cause any change and the rest won't. If you've just turned sync off, check that soft takeover isn't active, and often with soft takeover there are little lights to help you. On this controller you get these little lights here and here at the top and bottom that say that's the direction you've got to move in to get the fader to work again. You need to move it to where it would have been had you adjusted the tempo manually to where sync adjusted the tempo to. Practically just move it up and down until it starts working again. If you're nudging and you don't think it's working, it could be that you just don't understand nudge. Nudge is temporary. It won't make your BPM controls move at all on most systems. Some they will move and then quickly go back to where they were, but it's always temporary with nudge. Second your hand leaves the controller, it will go back to where it was. So understand it first, but also make sure key lock's off. If you think nudge isn't working, turn key lock off, then have a good listen and you'll probably find it is. Turn it on again and everything will sound better as you are practicing. And finally, if you think that your controls aren't doing enough or aren't working at all, the pitch range might be set very low. It's a new control for digital that was never on record decks. And so if you've come from that world, you're certainly going to be forgiven had you not spotted that control exists. Combined with key lock, that can really throw you as well. They're the main things that catch people out, catch our students out in our courses when they say, I can't get the speed stuff to work on my controller. Now, I did say I'd give you a bonus at the end, and after this, we're going to spend a few minutes chatting to the community because this is a live lesson from the Digital DJ Tips Studios. And so if you're not watching it live, you can still ask questions about this underneath wherever you are, and we'll get to you there, I promise you. I'm going to go over here to our Pro setup. And so the thing that you sometimes get on Pro gear that you don't normally get on controllers are these little buttons here, labeled in this instance tempo reset. Now sometimes these buttons can totally disable this fader. They can be used to put the fader basically into a setting where it doesn't do anything. And so just have a little look if you've got one of these buttons. Tap it and see if that just makes it work again. If you move to DJing on a system you're not familiar with, that's separates like this with a mixer and so on, and it's not working, don't be scared about that button. That could just be the reason why this isn't working at all for you. Okay, let's go over to the live chat and see what's going on and see if I can help you with anything around speed. We're going to talk just about speed controls today for the last few minutes here. I know lots of you are happy that we're back. At least I hope you are. It's the first lesson of the new term here at Digital DJ Tips as we record this. So hello to everyone. It's lovely to have you back, but I do want to keep this on topic. So this is from Mac, who says, once stems arrive, it's game over on Denon gear. This is Denon gear, of course, we've got here. Yes, you know, standalone gear with stems, which is where you can make instant acapellas by pressing a button and so on, certainly will be something that will sell in droves. Who gets there first? Who knows? But yeah, good point there, Mac. Right, questions about speed controls. Just so many of you saying that the school's back and it's great to have you back. Look, this is a little behind the scenes of me with all your comments coming through here. It's lovely to have so many comments. It's lovely to see you all again. DJ Angelo says, I only use sync to set the BPMs. I drop on the one, so it's almost beat matched. It's an interesting point. You know, depending again on the system you're using, the sync button doesn't always lock the beats together as well as change the tempo. Sometimes you can either set sync, or the way you turn it on can be used just to get the speed the same on both tracks, and totally leaving it up to you to match the beats if you like. And that can be very intuitive if you're coming to this kind of gear from CDJs or from record decks, because you're doing the part of syncing which takes time but isn't pleasing. You know, getting them to the same speed takes time, but you're like, I hate doing this every time. Once you've got them to the same speed, holding the tracks together, it's a bit like being on a surfboard riding a wave. It feels great. And actually, it cheats you a little bit to have this control that takes all that fun away from you. You know, it's like having stabilizers on a bike. You don't need it. And so, yeah, I agree. Sometimes just using sync to match the BPMs definitely works. It's not the only way to DJ. And certainly if you're not used to manual beat mixing, no reason to make it harder for yourself. But I totally take that point. So Martin is saying, yes, that's what the green arrows are for. I'm glad we talked about it. These two little, where my fingers are now, little arrows that will light up to show you which way to move the control when you are matching the beats after syncing. So thank you very much for that, Martin. And so what else have you got to say about nudging? So lots of advice about mixing. So do go and look at the comments in YouTube and on our Facebook channel if you want to get some tips here, because a lot of the community are offering tips on using these controls, which is great, like when to use nudge and when to use tempo and so on. So thank you everyone who's contributing there with this stuff. Oh, really good chat going on about psychology, group influence, interactions and relationships. So thank you very much for that, regulars. Good to see you getting back into the academic feel of being back at school, which of course we are. It's the new term. But anyway, we'll stick to talking about speed controls for this. This is from Starving Dragon, who says, tempo reset seems to work differently on my gear depending on whether I'm using Rekordbox, Serato, DJ Pro, etc. It always disables the tempo slider entirely, but re-enabling has differences. Yes, indeed it does. And you're quite right. If you're using Traktor or Serato or DJ Pro or Rekordbox, they all have different ways of turning sync on. They all have different things sync can do and different settings, different ways of turning it off. It could be shift and touching the sync button. It could be shift and touching it twice. So it's definitely worth reading the manual, or if you've got one of our Rekordbox, Serato or Traktor Made Easy courses, revising in there how it works. If you learn by watching videos, of course, most of us do nowadays, that's a good place to get up to speed with this. You're right. It's different, slightly different on all systems, and of course on standalone systems as well. So a few of you pointing out the differences between different types of sync. Thank you very much for that. And yes, tempo sync and beat sync are different. So in Digital DJ Tips Land, in our book, and the way we teach this stuff in our complete DJ course, we talk about sync and beat mixing we use three terms. We use tempo sync and we use beat sync to describe getting the tempos right. In other words, getting both tracks to 125 or 127 or whatever. We talk about beat sync, which is aligning the beats up once you've done that so that they're not going do, 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 they're going do, 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 right? We all know what we mean by that. And then only when you've done those two things can you say that you have beat match or beat mix those songs together. So tempo sync and beat sync, or tempo matching and beat matching, and then that contributes to the overall thing, which we call a beat mix, right? So different people use different words for it, but essentially there are always those two parts to a beat mix. Thank you for sharing that. This is from Craig, who says, Phil, thanks for your help. I'm 53. I now have a DJ Flex 4, speakers and headphones, all from your reviews. I'm loving the tips. I've no idea where I'm taking this new hobby, but I love that. So thank you for sharing that, Craig. That's what we want. We want people taking up this hobby at every age. Right, I'm going to leave it there, people. It's brilliant to be back. Thank you for tuning in today. I'll be back again with another live lesson very soon. Do continue to comment underneath this one, and do go grab our complete DJ course if you've liked this, which will take you through from the beginning to the end how DJing is done today, especially if you're coming from gear like this and you want to know how to use gear like this. That is what the course will give you. So go take a look at our complete DJ course, which is on the homepage of our website. At the very least, if you've enjoyed this, do go sign up to Digital DJ Tips. Yeah, you can subscribe to the channel. That's great. We love that stuff. But I'd rather you click the link and subscribe to Digital DJ Tips. That's how we can give you the good stuff. You'll get our weekly newsletter, and that's where the fun begins. Right. Meanwhile, get good, get out there, make the moments. And until next time, from Phil here in the studio, bye-bye.